This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 30. I am one of your allergic hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Turbo Penguin.
Did you bring the tissues? Because, man, before we started recording, I was sneezing my head off, man.
I didn't bring tissues, but I will send you digital tissues.
Digital tissues work. I think some Intel fanboys might need them because, Intel's B580 performance is kind of on the low side, it looks like.
Okay, I don't know if
we
I would
expected that, though, to be fair. I'm throwing shade. I'm kidding, sort of, but
I think I think we're jumping right into it, but I wanted to throw this out there. We do have a new graphics update for all three, actually.
Oh yeah,
NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel. So make sure to get out and get to updated drivers. But the hot topic that I think everyone wants to know is how is Intel making a graphics card and the second generation, and how is it looking compared to everything else? And look, we can obviously tell Moose that Moose is anti-Intel.
Come on! I couldn't resist poking. I couldn't resist.
He seriously
poking.
Loves Intel, no matter what he says.
Man, Team Green all the way. Woo!
Yeah, exactly.
Hate those consumers.
But really interesting. I think if you look at there's some positive things to take from Intel that are very good. Okay, first, it is a generational leap internally for Intel. It is they have addressed a lot of the issues in the A series. Okay, so that is a huge positive thing. Okay. So B series is faster than A series. The downside and what I kind of fall flat here is that, we don't necessarily get a B7 series, like a B770 or a B780 or something along those lines.
Right.
And I'm disappointed because I really feel like where they were going to play really well is if that is something that could scale. I just think reality sets in for them to say, this is what we have and this is where we're gonna fit for this series.
Yep.
So I'm hopeful that Celestial is what they're calling the next one. C.
Yep.
Whatever the C GPU is, and I'll give them this, at least with their A to Z, they get 26 letters.
Right.
Rather than 10. So I mean, it's a positive thing.
They've got more generations.
I know. I kind of, some people hate it and some people I don't hate it. So, and it doesn't have AI in the name, so I think that's super cool.
Right.
But I kind of just like I feel like I've got, you look and see where B580 is, and I think that at the end of the day, I think most gamers are like yearning and wanting for more.
Yep.
And I think if you're in a really tight budget and you can't sacrifice other places, I sort of think B580 will be really, really good at that 200 to 250 price point. But I also realize that nobody has a $250 price point for a graphics card.
Right.
So it's kind of not really competing with anything that's current gen. Okay. So it's like, yay, we're competing with
nothing.
RX 6700,
the 3050. Is there even a 4050 this generation?
No, there's not.
Yeah. So exactly. There's really no competition for it. And, needling in the intro aside, the fact that it's Intel's stated MSRP is $249, and we're seeing some people get cards shipped early that are in the $250 to $300 range. I think these cards could actually be well poised to be the budget PC leader. Like if you're just stuck in a situation where You got to have a good CPU, and you have no more room in the budget for a good mid-range, like a 4070 or a 7800, then, you know, go for it, because this is going to support all the modern displays. It's going to support modern AI processing, not necessarily as fast as higher tier cards, mind you, but it will support a lot of those features that you're not going to get in, say, previous generation cards that you might pick up on the used market.
So
And, you know,
here's my question, because like we talked about this in the used market, because
yeah,
I tend to look for deals on the used market, and I think there's some really interesting thoughts here. Like typically speaking, I would tell people at the $250 price point, like to look at used,
hmm,
because like I'm looking at used, and around me, I can find a 1080 Ti, I can find a 2080 Super, I can find some good couple of generation old. You don't really find any 3000 series. I mean, here's a 3070, a little bit high, you know, like here's a 2080 Super for 250, and I think
yeah,
that's not a bad card. Here's a 3070 for 300. Um, like, but the problem is I still think then you sit there and say, well, how is that better? And
yeah,
I still sit back and I look at reviews and I say, don't buy this and pre-order this unless you're just buying it to play with it, right?
yep, yeah,
Because I think the loaded question is, I have hope that drivers are way better. I have hope that drivers with the Intel GPUs are just going to work.
yep.
And if they do, I feel like this is probably like, is this better than the 3070?
Mm,
Uh, that's
eh,
that right there, I think, is where most gamers are
yeah,
going to say, look, it's 2 generations old. It's not even a 4070, it's a 3070.
yeah,
If I can
exactly.
get, now let's say the 3070 for $300 near me, I think if you offer the dude 220, he'd probably take it.
Yeah,
You know,
probably.
it's it's a little long in the tooth there. You know,
One of
would
the
is it better than a 3070?
uh
Jeez, I don't
considering
know. That's a really good question.
it's trading blows with a 4060, which, from my reading of the performance charts, is kind of in line with a 3070. My question is, since we haven't officially hit the release yet, we don't know how it's going to perform in actual ray tracing and things like that. But in Geekbench benchmarks, it's right up there with the 7700 and the 4060, which, for 249, considering those cards are in the $400 range new, um, you know, I think it's a really fair fight for the Intel card there, in the win column, because, 249 to $300, you get a brand new card with warranty coverage, and potentially longer lead time on the driver support, depending on factors. Um, you know, I know we keep talking about how Intel's going to be going through this downfall and it's having issues and stuff like that, but any way you slice it, Intel is going to be around for the foreseeable future. And, whether or not they continue to support Arc going forward is a question, because it's still a new product. How many products have we seen Intel come out with that all of a sudden we find out that they silently dropped when we get to the next, you know, annual or 18-month or biannual refresh, where they're like, oh, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. I mean, look at Optane for the consumer market. It's gone. You can't get it anymore. And, and so I think there is some question there. So if I were going to look at a B580, and I don't know why, but for some reason I keep trying to call it the B850, which I think was an Intel chipset several years ago. Um, but if I were going to be buying a B580, I would be looking at putting it into a new build for a young kid that wants to get into Fortnite, where, maybe this kid's going to be using it for homework most of the time, and then they're going to jump in and play some random Lego Fortnite or something.
I mean,
Or,
but if you look at some of the marketing pieces they have coming out, it's really
sure.
interesting that they're pushing 1440p
Yep.
because
Because that's
and
where the
that's
VRAM hit is.
yeah, and I think that makes sense for them to at least say that, because that's also where the 4060 still sucks.
Yeah.
I mean,
which I don't blame them
but
picking at that.
okay, so but let's be honest here. Okay, so if Nvidia had any cojones and actually gave a 4060 16 gig of RAM and say that was the bottom, I sort of think that this isn't even a fair fight.
No.
Between the two of them, because I really think that the Nvidia cards are being gimped from a GPU perspective.
Oh, we've proven that over the years. I mean, how many times have we seen videos of people throwing bigger memory chips at their Nvidia GPUs and getting 10, 15, 20% performance bumps? I mean,
Pretty big ones too. Yeah. I mean,
I'm seriously considering doing that to my laptop because, I mean, I've got a 3080M in it and it's an 8 gig model. If I can get some memory, 2 GB or 4 GB memory chips, gigabit memory chips, a little hot solder rework and double the performance.
Look, I am being very realistic here in saying that I'm pleasantly impressed by what we're hearing from what we're seeing.
Yep.
I firmly believe that Intel has done a fairly decent job at fixing some of the bottlenecks in their graphics cards. I will give them absolute kudos for that.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for independent reviews before I really say it's a really good thing. If as long as reviews go well and we don't have really bad, but I'm not expecting it to be really bad. I think the follow-up question then comes in is that, okay, how do you sell and what's the use case? And I know there's people out there that the use case is there. I just start to question and have is that I think a lot of gamers are going to look at Intel and say, no.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a perception increase that needs to happen. And I sort of think that that's maybe what could have been the B7 series. And, the thing is that at one point down the road, B, C, D, E, F, somewhere they're going to have to stretch their legs and go for a 7. And they're going to have to make a 7 that makes sense.
Yeah. Or a 9 even.
Or a 9 even. But I sort of just look at this and I say, okay, so it's a B5. So it's an i5 graphics card. I mean, that's kind of what it kind of feels like. It's not bad. There's i5s that were good, but they weren't, it wasn't an i9. And I sort of kind of think that's kind of maybe why we're seeing it. Is it better than the onboard? Yes. Mm-hmm. Is it better than a GT, 710 or a 730? Yes, because those cards go back to 2010.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
So then you sit back and you ask the question, is it a bad card? No, I don't think it's a bad card. I think in the right use it is, but I really don't think I do not expect us to see any water cooling blocks for these. I don't expect to see, I think you'll have cool looking cards, but I don't think we'll see overclocked, 5 gigahertz. Or I just don't see that you'll have a lot of those. And I think the cards that are going to sell are probably going to be the cards that either have RGB or they're going to be at the cheapest price possible.
Yeah.
And the ones that are probably going to do well are going to be inexpensive and RGB. And extra fans, because more fans and more RGB sells apparently. That's all we care about as gamers.
Hey, more fans means you can circulate more air. It helps keep the GPU cooler, which, you can also run more fans at a lower RPM and get it quieter too. But,
Absolutely.
I think it'd be pretty awesome. I don't think he's going to do this, but I think it would be pretty awesome if Der Bauer did grab a couple of B580s and did some liquid nitrogen overclocking on them and just beat the living snot out of them. Just say, hey, how much can we make this do if we force a bunch of voltage through it like it's a 14th gen trying to kill its own ring bus?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, I couldn't resist the
Oh
Intel
my
reference.
gosh.
Come on, guys. It was easy. Low hanging fruit, kind of like the
Now,
B580.
we've got a bunch of Battle Mage stuff, right? Which is
Yep.
kind of cool because Battle Mage is supposed to be coming out. It's supposed to launch in stores on the 13th, and I believe we'll start seeing independent reviews next day or two.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm very interested. And I think in general, I think that reviews are going to be positive. I think that though it's going to be, the notion is going to be people wanting more.
Yeah.
The other thing that came out this week is Radeon graphics drivers 24.12.1.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people say, oh, it's just, yeah, it is. But this is the first driver set to have drivers for an 8600 and an 8800.
Yep.
So if you could have smuggled an 8800 out of AMD's R&D, technically speaking, you can install drivers and play video games on it today.
Yep.
Or 4 days ago, apparently.
Which,
And
from,
yes.
if they have them in reviewers' hands, which I would be surprised if they don't by this point, that means that they are testable in a live environment, which means we might
Yes.
start seeing more performance leaks coming out. So people accidentally leaving their automatic performance reporting on in 3D Mark and all that good stuff, which never happens except every single time.
Look, I mean, look, I think we have to realize that leaks are a normal thing.
Yep.
And I think the loaded question you have to take is I believe that both sides leak on purpose, both good and bad.
Yeah.
I think that AMD probably releases positive scores when they're like, ooh, that's better than we thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably a very smart. I just think it's a way that they can control, the talking heads of saying it's better than it would. This is it's a positive thing because the notion is that you don't want bad press, and so if we have good positive press, then that's what it looks like.
Yep.
I will say the one thing I will have to say I was really liking is when you get Doug Peterson, Tom Peterson, the Peterson dude who's the graphics guy at Intel.
Yeah,
we're just gonna go
formerly
with Peterson,
NVIDIA.
Formerly NVIDIA. Like he is like the biggest graphics card nerd to mankind.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit down and just listen to him talk about graphics cards for like a couple of hours and not get bored.
Yeah.
Like he does a really good job. And even then, like you see him like going over these graphs and getting all nerdy. And even though I don't fully follow exactly his nerdiness on the graphics cards, like the guy is totally excited. And it's really cool because I sort of have the thinking that the dude legitimately has played video games and like he actually is excited about the stuff.
Yeah.
Now maybe it's because he's going to get paid a crap ton of money.
Oh, he makes bank. You know that.
Yeah. He's, but yeah, he is a full on like nerd. He's got every gadget known to mankind, but the dude is easy to listen to. And to be honest, for a lot of us gamers and technology people, like, I feel like he's very relatable. I think he's a very good person for Intel to have in that position. And, not that anyone from Intel really listens, but, whatever he's paid, he's not paid enough.
No,
I'm sure he gets paid a crap ton of money. You can pay the dude more. He's worth it.
He genuinely has a passion for graphics. And you can tell he's an enthusiast.
My first time meeting him at a LAN party.
Yep.
And like I don't think we and you had met yet, but we were up at PDX. And we were talking like, and it was I think me and Force. We were just chatting, waiting for somebody. Like he's like, I'm like, who's talking? He's like, oh, some guy from NVIDIA. And Peterson was like right next to him, and he's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's me. And I'm like, oh, so you're the NVIDIA guy? He's like, yeah, I'm the NVIDIA guy. And he was like, I was like, oh, what do you think about this? And we were asking him, I don't know, I think we were playing Supreme Commander, and he's like, dude, I love Supreme Commander. And like, he
Yeah.
actually knew what we were talking about. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's surprising. Most marketing people are like,
Well, and
don't
he's
know
more
anything
than
about their video games or
yeah, he's way
their
more than
users.
marketing too, because he does a fair bit of the engineering on some of this stuff.
Mhm.
A good example
Absolutely.
was the frame rating from years ago that PC Perspective helped spearhead when everybody was dealing with microstutter with SLI. Shoot, that was almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it helped, not only did it help NVIDIA improve SLI, but Tom was able to also help AMD improve Crossfire through this program because they were detecting where microstutter was happening and able to feed that data regardless of what GPU it was. And so, it's not just that Intel poached him from Nvidia. To be perfectly honest, my feeling from Nvidia is when Intel grabbed him, the passion for consumer graphics and the stuff that we enjoy evaporated from the company and it went to Intel. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm all for it because it just kind of exposed a lot of the crud that is behind the scenes at Nvidia and why they're really not as good as their GPUs make them out to be as a company. But, not to completely slag on Nvidia, but yeah, I mean, Tom being an asset for Intel, I think, is part of the reason why I have, at the very least, some hope that Intel's going to do some good stuff here because they've got someone who is not just a champion of good quality graphics, but someone who's a champion for the customer because they are one. And that's Tom in a nutshell. Like every single presentation I have seen him do has just had me glued. And I'm ADD as heck. I'll bring back at what was that GeForce Land 4 when you guys set the Guinness World Record. Yes, we have a world record holder with us here. At GeForce Land 4, I watched his presentation and I didn't bring out my BlackBerry once. Most of the time I pull it out and I was just doing other stuff while just kind of absorbing the info. But he had me grabbed and that's good times, man. Good times. And if you get a chance to listen to one of his talks, definitely do it. And you can see that actually in the latest Gamers Nexus. So pop over there after you give us a like and a subscribe and watch that video. So
Look, I think the positive, the one thing I would just say, really simply put, is I think that this is a step forward for Intel.
yeah.
I think it's a positive step forward. As always, I want more.
Yep.
I don't see that as a bad thing.
Right.
Because I think Intel, even on their side, wants more too. I mean, they want to be able to compete with the Nvidias and the AMDs. I think at this price point, Intel will sell cards.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a huge market. I really think they probably need to be in the $350, $400 price point from a performance perspective.
Yeah.
But I think that if we take a look at what it is and we realize that they're learning about what's not working, then I sit there and I say, this is not a bad thing.
Right.
And I'll say that I thought after A series, I thought it was a flop.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely was.
There were talks that Battle Mage would be gone. And we come to that, it's actually going to launch. Celeste is at least cooked. It's done.
Yep.
They're just trying to get it ready. And I just think in general, people need to be saying this is not a bad thing.
No,
so
I think Intel priced it very fairly for the performance that we're seeing right now. I think it's positioned not necessarily very well.
I think fair is a very, very good description of this car.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's great. I don't think it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the use case, I think it's probably your best option at this price point. And I'll say this, it's more current. I think the only concern that I would have as a gamer is longevity and driver support. And I feel like driver support has gotten way better. And so then the all follow-up question is longevity.
Yep.
And nobody will know, but you're right. I sure hope Intel stays around. I sure hope that Arc continues, because if Arc continues, then that's a good thing for all gamers.
I wholeheartedly agree. And, there's really not much I can add. Exactly, except
we're going to bombshell this.
Thank you all for watching. Appreciate your time and giving us a little bit of your day. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things down in the doobly-doo that satisfy that beast that is the YouTube algorithm. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Later, guys.
Good night, everybody.